This is the first generation iPod Touch. Launched in the same year as the original iPhone 2007, some of you might consider this, well, it's not so different than the iPhone. It is an iPhone without the phone. But it's actually a misconception. This is actually fully meant to be an iPod. Steve Jobs never said that until at least a year after this. And I'm going to show you why this is actually closer to this than this. You ready? So this is the iPod Touch first gen. Now let's take a look around, right? The front looks basically like an iPhone. 3.5 inch, 480 by 320, right? Home button, right? No earpiece, which makes sense because this is not a phone. And the 3-pin dock connector. But hold on, wait, where is the speaker? And the headphone jack is way down here. And if we go up, it's not quite like the phone. In fact, it is swapped around. There's no headphone jack. The headphone jack went down, but the sleep wake button is on the left. And if we look at the left of the iPod, there is no volume button. In fact, there is no volume button anywhere on this iPod. Nowhere. When we look at the iPod here on the left, this is represented by the iPod Nano, right? But the exact model of the iPod is kind of immaterial. We're just here for the average iPod experience. So let's take a look. Wait, 3-pin dock connector and a headphone jack on the right. And just like the iPod Touch first gen, no volume buttons anywhere. And no speaker grills, unlike the iPhone, which means that hardware-wise, that this is not just an iPhone that's stripped down. This is intentionally close to an iPod. I've been thinking, okay, what's so special? So let's get started with the iPhone first, right? You know the iPhone. It slides to unlock, and there you go. You can hear the click sound, right? There's a special sound effect for unlocking, right? And it can play sounds. Right, that's what we expect from an iPhone. But let's listen closely, right? So we have the lock and unlock sounds. Let's listen in to this iPod. Just a click. Another click. Here I go in, settings. No sound settings. In fact, let's pick up this iPod here. And which one is it closer to? Or, right? So there you go. There's no speaker in this thing, which means that you cannot listen to any kind of media with this iPod Touch without a pair of headphones. This is purely just for the UI click, like that. And while it does have a clock app, it only has these sounds. There's no marimba. There's only this is actually called a piezo clicker. It only clicks. There is no actual speaker. But it can still create a bunch of sounds. This is incredible. Now, okay, on the iPod here, because there's no volume control, all you can really do is rotate back and forth and you change the volume. And because there's no volume control, you have to do the same thing. I've been thinking, well, do I have to go into the music app to, change the volume? Well, this is one of the ways, but there's actually another way. If I double click, look at this. A little interface that allows you to change the volume, hit playback, and I have a very easy shortcut to go back to music. If I do this on the iPhone, you might be thinking, well, it's also on the iPhone. Let's double click. It doesn't do anything. In fact, it is the only device that has this kind of this control center as control in the user interface. Can't believe it. Exclusive to the iPod Touch. because to compensate for the lack of a volume control, just like an iPod. And then finally, right, you might be thinking, well, the iPhone has all of these apps, right? Calendar, right? Contacts, which is in the phone app, YouTube, right? Clock, calculator, settings, right? These are all phone apps, videos, photos. Well, are you sure? Let's take a look at the iPod again. Music, videos, photos. What about extras? What about everything else? Let's see. Clock, calendar, contacts, alarm, and even games, and even notes, and even a stopwatch. That's right. The iPod has all of the functionality of the iPhone, and they just copied it to the iPod Touch. So this is not iPhone OS for iPhone OS sake. This is considered an iPod, just happened to be using iPhone OS interface. And 8,782 hours ago, or whatever. But yeah, so this is actually more iPod than iPhone, which makes this a profoundly weird device. And, of course, the very first iOS device to have the headphone jack at the bottom. And yeah, the iPod Touch is the first gen is a lot weirder than you remember. No internal speakers, you have to plug in headphones, which is the case with the iPod. And it launched with 1.1, so it has the iTunes Wi-Fi music store. But you can also pay $20 for a later software update that gets you access to 5 different apps. It includes notes, it includes weather, and all of that. And you start to catch up with the iPhone, because until now it's been constricted to these apps has been constricted to the set of the iPod. In fact, the entire hardware is constricted to make sure that it is more iPod than iPhone. And indeed, if we flip it around, there you go. It's just an iPod that happens to use iPhone software. Get the logic? And that's how weird the original iPod Touch is. No speaker, no volume buttons, and it's just an iPod with iPhone UI. It is very, very weird, but hopefully by now you understand the logic. And you understand why Steve Jobs never actually called it an iPhone without the phone, because it's really not meant to be in the first place. So yeah, hope you found it just as weird as I found it. Thanks for watching.